Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the morning of Friday, the 2nd of November 2018. And up here on the edge of the East Lancashire moors, it's a balmy 5 degrees. Well, it is down there where the sun has broken through. I'm still in a bit of the shadow here, so there's even a touch of frost still on the ground. Anyway, isn't life getting interesting? Francis Egan definitely takes the award for Whinger of the Decade. So Francis Egan, having been in the chief executive role at Cuadrilla since late 2012, so that's about 6 years, and in all that time Francis Egan has had plenty of opportunity to challenge the traffic light system, which emerged from the Royal Society report that was published earlier in that same year, 2012. And Francis Egan, throughout that period, has always maintained that the traffic light system is eminently workable because it was very rare for any seismic activity to be triggered by hydraulic fracturing above 0.5. But now that they've got 15 days, or give or take, of experience of pressurizing the well at Prestonby Road, all of a sudden the traffic light system is strangling the industry at birth. Well, I'm sorry, Francis, but this simply highlights the magnitude of your own ignorance, your own incompetence, your arrogance, and your hubris, that you could do this and the traffic light system would be fine, and then believing that once you discovered that actually you couldn't frack with that traffic light system, you bitch, you whinge, you moan to just about anybody who will listen, that unless the levels are lifted, then it's unlikely that you are going to be able to achieve viable levels of production or flow from the well at Prestonby Road. Now, funnily enough, actually that's what people have been trying to explain for the last 6 years or so. And of course you and your puppet politicians have refused to listen. So we know from your own admission that every day you're not fracking basically is costing 94,000 in kit rental that you're not utilizing. So needless to say, we are noticing that you are getting desperate. Now, you on site have Schlumberger. Schlumberger are the oilfield service company that you have engaged to actually undertake the frack job. Now, no surprise here, because Schlumberger are without any shadow of doubt the most expensive service company on the planet. And the reason that they're the most expensive is because it is arguable that they have the greatest level of expertise. And because you knew the sensitivity of this operation, you engaged what you believed to be the best in the industry. Now, Schlumberger have a reputation to uphold, and there have been the odd occasions when Schlumberger have put their reputation at risk. And I am going to ask the question, is there the possibility that Schlumberger might feel or succumb to the pressure that you put on them to do something that they might otherwise not do? And the last time this occurred was really on the BP Deepwater Horizon. And, I have shared this a number of times over the past few years, but most significantly, I shared it in the relative immediate aftermath of the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster. So for those of you who aren't aware, let me tell you what happened. Halliburton was actually the company employed by BP to do the cementing of the well. And as we now know, Halliburton were pressurized by the company man, Donald Vidrine, into running the final stages of the cement in the final stage of the well, despite not having all of the packers that they needed to ensure absolute bonding of the cement. So despite knowing that they hadn't got enough packers, they succumbed to the pressure and went ahead with the cement job. Now, oilfield practice is that whomever it is that does the cement job, somebody else does the well integrity test, in this case the cement bond log, and in this situation it was Schlumberger. Now, one of the first things that you do with this, when you're running the cement bond log, is you hook up a very sensitive spectrum analyzer to establish whether or not there is any vibration in the well, because if there is, there's a problem. Well, in this case it wasn't just vibration, the well was seriously kicking. And the Schlumberger engineers advised Donald Vidrine, the head honcho on the rig at that time. He'd managed to get rid of the guy who really knew what he was doing, Ronald Sepulvado. And Vidrine basically wanted to make a name for himself by completing the Macondo well, which was also known as the well from hell due to all the problems they had in its construction. Well, the Schlumberger guys immediately established that there was a mega problem with this well and advised Vidrine to shut the well in immediately because it was kicking so badly, the likelihood is it would blow. Well, Donald Vidrine's response was, "Not on my watch." So the Schlumberger guys were so spooked, they phoned their boss in New Orleans, who arranged for a helicopter to be flown out to the rig and picked up the Schlumberger guys. In the film, the helicopter is shown taking the Schlumberger guys off, but the narrative has been modified in that the helicopter was on a scheduled crew change. That was not the case. So the Schlumberger guys left the rig at 11 o'clock, and 10 hours and 20 minutes later, boom, the well blew. Well, in the subsequent inquiry, which was convened by the Louisiana Coast Guard, Schlumberger refused to give evidence. They refused to identify the engineers that were on the rig at that time, and unfortunately the Louisiana Coast Guard were denied the power of subpoena by the US Senate. That's a whole nother story. And so consequently the Coast Guard couldn't demand that persons of interest attend the inquiry, and so nobody from Schlumberger gave evidence in the inquiry. And the reason for that was that Schlumberger did not want to explain, I'm going to say spread the dirt over BP, because that's what they would have had to do. They would have had to make it very clear that Donald Vidrine was the man who caused the BP Deepwater Horizon disaster because of his refusal to listen to the Schlumberger guys. Now, when a Schlumberger guy tells you that you need to shut the well in, you should listen, because he doesn't do it lightly, because if ultimately that Schlumberger engineer is proven to be wrong, his career is over. But that's what his training is all about. His training is about making the right call. And in that situation, they made the right call, but they didn't have Schlumberger did not have the cojones to actually call it for what it was, a disaster in the making. So, what's going to happen here? Consider the possibility that today, in an act of desperation, Francis Egan instructs Schlumberger to just fire up the pumps. And basically, because he's on the back foot, says, you know what? Look, regardless of if we trigger a 0.5, regardless if we even trigger a 1.1, just keep those pumps rolling, because we need to get gas flow. And if we get gas flow, even if we trigger a 2.3, we can then say, look, if you raise the level to 2.5 or 3, look at the gas flow we can get. And will Schlumberger actually go along with that? You know, the general rule is that the company man is king. But the reason that Schlumberger are there is because they are regarded as the specialists. Now, are they likely to prostitute themselves. They know what the terms of operation should be, and they know very well that at the moment that a 0.5 is triggered, they have to shut the pumps down and wait for 18 hours. But Francis Egan is getting desperate. We know he's a man who is of dubious integrity, because here is a man who basically has reportedly stated that back in 2011, the well was not damaged by the fracking process, and they did not continue pumping after the damage was acknowledged. Well, here is the lie, because we know from Professor Peter Stiles' report that Cuadrilla ran a caliper down the well, and they knew very well that the well had been damaged, and they simply plugged the well above the what they believe to be the damaged point at around about 8,400 feet, and then continued with the frack process. So, you know, that's a matter of record. But obviously what we're seeing now is Francis Egan and Cuadrilla desperately trying to rejig history to claim that events that we all know happened actually didn't. Well, fortunately, there's a lot of people watching this industry. It's under scrutiny like no other industry probably in this country. And Francis Egan, if you pull a stunt like this, then, you know, you will be held to account. And it's pleasing to note that Claire Perry has quite possibly realised that she has been set up as the sacrificial lamb, which is why, for the first time, she showed a degree of integrity when, in response to a challenge as to whether or not the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy was considering raising the traffic light limit above the 0.5, she made the observation that it would be foolish to do so at this stage of the proceedings. So today is an extremely important day. It's absolutely essential that people are monitoring what's occurring on the BGS website and making sure that Cuadrilla do not attempt to blast through the traffic light system in a desperate bid to get what they might demand or regard as a viable gas flow. And Schlumberger, you know, if they are found to be complicit in any way, shape or form, then of course they must also be held to account. But, you know, watch the shenanigans that unfold as everybody sort of points the finger to somewhere else. So, for all but the casual observer, the unconventional gas industry in the UK is on the cusp of being as dead as a proverbial dodo. But at this stage, you know, because it's cornered, it's likely to do anything to try to justify its continued existence. And that's why, you know, we have to have such tremendous scrutiny on this. Now, I would also like to acknowledge the work of Helen Chunso, because once again, she's been absolutely on point on the Freedom of Information requests. And if you go to whatdotheyknow.com, and in the search box at the top of that page, then just put in Helen Chunso. And in fact, put in Helen Chunso and then well integrity. And you will see Helen's latest Freedom of Information request, which she's addressed to the Health and Safety Executive. And I'll post a link beneath this video. But obviously, as I made the observation on Wednesday, it seems really quite remarkable that Cuadrilla are able to announce within an hour of shutting down the pumps after triggering a 0.5 or bigger, that they've tested the well and they can absolutely confirm the integrity of the well. Well, Helen has asked the extremely poignant questions here of the HSE, and she's asking who is responsible for checking the well integrity. What is their job title? What is their position? And what systems are they using to test the well integrity? And then she's asking, once hydraulic fracturing has commenced, please provide a document, correspondence or link explaining the HSE regulatory position regarding the role of the HSE and or the independent well examiner in checking the well integrity. Is there a requirement for HSE independent well examiner to make site visit? If so, please state the dates of the visits to Preston Road by the HSE and or by the independent well examiner. Please confirm if a desktop examination of data sent by the operators to HSE is adequate to examine well integrity. Well, it's an extremely probing freedom of information request. And I would encourage people to familiarize themselves with the questions that Helen is asking here of the HSE. So, you know, obviously Cuadrilla rely on there being so many different regulatory participants here. They can just keep pointing the finger and say, well, they said, no, they said, and they said, and keep dodging the proverbial bullet. And of course, as we've also previously discussed, Natasha Engel, you know, she who has a somewhat dubious relationship with Elbit Systems, the manufacturer of phosphorus and white phosphorus and cluster bombs, as the shale gas commissioner, is about as useful as a chocolate fireguard. So the pressure is absolutely on. And, you know, we could well see a situation literally within the next, few days where Cuadrilla are emulating Third Energy and starting to move equipment from Preston Road with their tail very firmly between their legs. But it will only happen if we, the collective we, maintain the pressure on everyone involved. And that means not just Claire Perry, but Greg Clark. And as I said, I think Claire has probably realised that she was set up here. A nice bit of manoeuvring there by Greg in an attempt to protect his future political career. And if Claire Perry wants to protect her future political career, then she is certainly not going to be bullied into raising the 0.5 limit on the traffic light system. Well, obviously investors are also showing their concerns. The stock price of AJ Lucas tanked by nearly 18% yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to have a look this morning, but no doubt that trajectory is going to continue because AJ Lucas have effectively wound up all of their Australian operations, and they are literally hanging their hat on Cuadrilla's success at Preston Road, which is now looking increasingly less likely. And of course, others who are about to get their comeuppance on a financial basis are the Wensleys, who, of course, leased the well site to Cuadrilla. And you know what we know, and this is thanks to the research of Ben Dean. What we know is that Farmer Wensley is getting £40,000 a year in rental from Cuadrilla from leasing that well site, and then in addition to that, he's going to get £6,500 for every lateral well, every horizontal well that goes into production. So that might explain why one of Farmer Wensley's daughters about 18 months ago or so made the crass comment that it didn't really matter if Cuadrilla contaminated the water because the Wensleys would be drinking champagne. Well, you know, your £40,000 a year might be guaranteed for a minimum period, but your £6,500 per horizontal well in production is now looking decidedly dodgy, at risk, unlikely to happen. So there we have it. It's Friday, the 2nd of November. The unconventional gas industry in the UK is on the cusp of being extinguished at birth. And of course, had the industry, had the Tory government listened to the anti-fracking campaigners, had they actually done their own research, as we have always encouraged people to do, then they might have realized that this was a non-starter right from the get-go. Now, of course, it's not just the Preston Road that's at risk. Over in North Nottinghamshire, IGAS are still intent on bringing rigs onto the two sites they have there at Tinker Lane and at Misson Springs, but they're a long way from fracking. They haven't even drilled the well yet. They certainly haven't done any core sample analysis, and they actually don't have permission yet to start the fracking process. Well, if IGAS are smart, and if the IGAS shareholders are smart, then they will be encouraging IGAS to hold fire and not spend any more money, not throw any more money down the proverbial black hole until the dramas at Preston Road are fully played out. And let me tell you that the geology at Tinker Lane and Misson Springs is far more susceptible to seismic activity than even the geology at Preston Road, because North Nottinghamshire certainly was subjected to significant coal mining activity. Preston Road is outside of that mining activity, so in theory the geology there should be more stable, but as we and Cuadrilla and Schlumberger now know, that ain't the case. So have a great day, and I know that there will be a number of people, considerable number of people, monitoring Cuadrilla today extremely closely, and due to Facebook's desire to limit the distributions of my videos, please do what you can and help to share, and let's get the scrutiny to such a level that Cuadrilla, Claire Perry and Greg Clark know fine well that there is no possibility of this industry ever becoming established in the UK. You have a great weekend, and I will be back on Monday morning at 8:30. You take care.